What does finality actually mean? An action or an event that ends something irreversibly. Why am I telling you this, you're asking? Because, well, no reason at all. Alright, 3.0 Amphoreus. Consider this your spoiler warning, although if you're clicking on this video, I'm assuming you've already played it. Now, Amphoreus as a story wasn't super complicated, so I'm not going to do what I usually do and break it play by play and then discuss it after. My recap of the entire story is going to be much more brief and summarized for two reasons. One, it was a very long quest and this video does not need to be an hour long. And two, I don't feel that it was overly convoluted or complicated that justifies me explaining it scene by scene. The story that they present at face value is pretty straightforward. But where this story actually shines, and what I want to discuss in this video for the most part, are all the implications. The bigger picture here. We got March 7th. We got a ton of crazy Easter eggs just dropped in voice lines that are very important. This mysterious third Aeon. What Amphoreus actually tells us about Honkai Star Rail's bigger picture in the universe. Herta and Nows of Erudition. March 7th. The Remembrance. The 13 Flamechasers. The Black Tide or the Abyss and the Titans. The Stellaron Hunters and our flashbacks. Along with Phainon. Oh, don't worry, we're going to talk about him, because we have only just scratched the surface. This is only 3.0, so naturally it left us with a ton of questions, but that's okay. They had to set up a lot of different story elements, set up the world, so that in 3.1 we can hit the ground running. But first, let's give a general recap. So naturally it starts off like it does every time on the Astral Express. We're all taking a debate where we want to go, and we ultimately agree on the destination Black Swan suggested to us after Penacony, Amphoreus, the Eternal Land, mainly because of the intrigue of nobody knowing about it. A very mysterious place. But because there's no Star Rail tracks, Pom Pom has made a special car for 2 passengers, which ultimately ends up being us, obviously, and Dong Hung. I was really hoping Welt would be the second one they picked, but hey, why not pick one of the characters that doesn't even have a voice actor? I'm just kidding, but it does kind of take you out of the story quest a little bit. But briefly before that, Black Swan mentions that the garden caught a glimpse of this place, and that 3 paths are intertwined here. We know that the Remembrance and Erudition are 2 of the 3. This mysterious third path is meant to be very ominous and mysterious for a reason. Himiko mentions that this isolated star system is home to beings comparable to emanators. Now this is important, because Black Swan then says, I would even go as far as to say they're comparable to the Aeons themselves. This is the first major huge information we get, because they're obviously referencing the Titans. Welt has a good question. How the hell has no one heard about this place if we have beings that are comparable to the Aeons? Great question, Welt. Black Swan then tells us she doesn't know the third path. It could be Equilibrium, the Enigmata, Permanence. Personally, I think this kind of eliminates those ones because she's just telling us. Not saying that's 100% true, that's just how I feel, and I already know which path I'm like 99% sure that it is, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We're all ready to go, but March 7th is nowhere to be found. She's feeling sick, which I don't think anyone that played the story quest is surprised by this. We're getting close to a world associated with the Remembrance, and now March 7th, something's not right with her, and she has an entire backstory we don't know about. Like, we have no idea who she actually is, where she comes from, what she is, but now she's having a weird reaction to being near Amphoreus. Now we're traveling in our car to Amphoreus when we get hit out of the sky and crash land pretty aggressively. We were shot out of the sky, which I'm fairly certain that this was the Sky Titan that beams us out of the sky. There's a very underlining theme about Amphoreus, gods versus humans, and it's taboo to venture out of Amphoreus. Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. So for outsiders or people beyond the stars to just venture in their car, no crap, we got beamed out of the sky. We crash land, but we have no communication now with the Astral Express or anyone on the outside, and this goes both ways. The place looks pretty rough, but as you venture on, you can see glimpses of the past, and a creature associated with the Remembrance leading the way. Now, March 7th asked us to take pictures because she was sad she couldn't come, she's not feeling well. So we start taking pictures. Like, the atmosphere is pretty cool here, even though it looks apocalyptic and like a dead civilization. And this is where we meet one of Chryso's heirs, Phainon, who actually takes both of our weapons. But Tribby is able to resolve it. These are 2 of the 13 Flamechasers. Now, from here we can sort of speed up the entire recap process, because Amphoreus is a land filled with titans. There are 12 titans in total, and all of the titans come in packs of 3, 6, 9, 12. There are 3 titans of calamity, which are the Titan of Strife, which is going to be a main focus point of 3.0, the Titan of Trickery, and the Titan of Death. Then there's the 3 titans of Foundation. There's the Titan of Earth, Titan of Ocean, and the Titan of the Sky. Earth, Ocean, and Sky, which is the one most likely that shot us out of the sky. Then there's the 3 titans of Creation. The World-Bearing Titan, Titan of Romance, and the Titan of Reason. And lastly, the last 3 titans, we have the Titans of Fate. We have the Titan of Passage, the Titan of Law, and of course, the Titan of Time. Now again, these titans were compared to Aeons from Black Swan, and these titans sort of make up Amphoreus. They're gods that humans have worshipped for a long time, and if you notice, the titans kind of represent similar things as Aeons do, a concept or ideal. And Amphoreus is a story about humanity taking that control from the titans for themselves. The titans have gone corrupt, and are a threat to humanity, so they mean to save themselves and take that authority from the titans, hence the 13 Flamechasers, foretold by the prophecies to be the ones to become demigods from each titan's path or concept. Right away, I noticed a lot of parallels with Teyvat, almost identical, even right down to the Abyss, and the corruption that brings. They even refer to it as the Black Tide in both games. And funny enough, a lot of people speculated that the Abyss is actually the Honkai, which is another concept that engulfs worlds, corrupts all living things. Like I said, Amphoreus sprouts a ton of theories right off the top of my head, and humans living in Amphoreus have no idea of the Aeons of other worlds. As far as anyone knows here, for the most part, they are the only humans, the Titans are the only supreme gods, and that is it. Some speculate naturally, but it's all conspiracy. It's all hearsay, and only higher-ups really know about the outside worlds. It's even told to us that the Sky Titan has destroyed a civilization that tried to venture out into the stars. Of course, humanity gets curious, but like I said, it's similar to Teyvat, it's forbidden. And it seems that humanity and the politics here is going to be interesting too. Because yeah, the Titans might be presented as the villains right away, but you can already tell that humanity is villains of themselves. Amphoreus is the eternal land, literally in the shape of an infinity logo. Unknown by anyone on the outside world, but people on the inside world are equally as naive. Once we save Amphoreus' last stronghold, the eternal city of Okama, we are invited to go meet Aglaya, who has already obtained demigod status by taking the core of the Titan of Romance. We have some interesting conversations with her, and she pretty much reveals to us history of the Titans and Amphoreus in exchange for not revealing that we're from the outside world. But we screw that up almost immediately as somebody tricks us to take a picture but notices some other pictures on March 7th's camera that are clearly not from Amphoreus. From here, the story is pretty straightforward. We assist Phainon and Mighty to finally take down the Titan of Strife. We are unsuccessful, but Mighty's able to battle it eternally in a never-ending fight to stall it, while it gives us time to come up with a more permanent solution. And this guy cannot die, so he'll be fighting a Titan and dying over and over again to stall for us to actually come rescue him and deal with this Titan for good. But we need to find a way to defeat it. This is where the remembrance comes into play. We then join forces with Castrice, who is associated with the Titan of Death and one of the 13 Flamechasers, but nobody's been able to get in contact with the Titan of Death, or what actually happened to it. This is where we need the help of the Titan of Time to actually find a way to look back and see how we can defeat Strife. The Titan pleading out, "Mother, Mother," calling to us, saying that please follow me, she also misses you. We want to see everything about you. Where we finally see that creature again from the beginning of the story quest, and we finally get some flashbacks on our own history, our own forgotten memories, and naturally includes the Stellaron Hunters, something we've talked a lot about on this channel. We also gain the Gaze of Fully of Remembrance and gain that power along with our new companion. It gives us power of remembrance. And immediately I laughed when they're like, what the hell is Fully? They have no idea what the Aeons are. And from here we're able to venture into the past of the nation that Mighty's actually from, and learn more about the truth of how the Titan of Strife actually became corrupted and became the way that it is in current game. We're able to defeat it, and Phainon is able to claim the core. We then cut to Herta. I did feel she was a little bit shoehorned into the story, but it wasn't necessarily bad. She's able to lay some traps of a memo keeper trying to snag some intel on Now's Erudition, as Herta's trying to actually physically communicate with the Aeon directly. But obviously that can't be an easy task even for an Emanator. Then we get some funny dialogue where Welt and Sunday are jeopardizing that entire operation she set up. But they did it for good reason. They thought something was wrong with the space station and were more or less just worried. So she brushes it off and they ask for her help. They cannot reach their two companions and Amphoreus, and are now cut off from them, which leaves for an interesting dynamic. Why were the Memo Keepers trying to creep in on Herta? What does Now's Erudition know that the Memo Keepers want to know? And now Herta, arguably the smartest character in the entire universe, is going to be aiding us in cracking the code of Amphoreus, how it's able to isolate itself from the outside world, and why the Astral Express can no longer communicate from within, obviously due to the Titans. They obviously don't want outside interference and never have. A lot of parallels with Teyvat and the Heavenly Principles, how everyone from within Teyvat is naive to the outside worlds, the Abyss, but there are worlds out there. It's interesting, playing an Amphoreus through the Trailblazers is sort of like playing in Teyvat and Genshin, but from the other perspective. Then all that's left is for Phainon to actually inherit the core and awaken as a demigod. But like everyone can sense about him, he has some doubts within himself, which the essence of the Titan's able to pick up on, so he must face one more trial and prove himself worthy, which he gladly accepts. And of course, according to Aglaya and Mighty, what actually fuels Phainon is revenge. Revenge against the Titans, the destruction of his homeland and country, his nation, losing everyone and everything. But what fuels him is being the chosen one, and the most chosen one among the 13. According to Aglaya herself, he's the most exceptional, and the prophecy has given him new purpose. And this is where we get an interesting flashback of a younger Phainon with a mysterious girl who I only can assume is Alicia, or the variant version of Alicia from the 13 Flamechasers, a long-lost childhood friend, and I'm assuming that she's one of the unknown 13 Flamechasers of this current era, one of the Chrysos heirs, maybe even undiscovered yet by the current ones we've met. And naturally, it leaves us with a ton of questions, and I can't answer them all in this video, but I'll try to summarize what my thoughts are and where I think the story's headed. The third Aeon I think is at play here, and it kinda seems fairly obvious to me, is the finality. The whole concept of Amphoreus, its prophecies, and its doomsday fits the theme of finality, an irreversible end, which also fits the 13 Flamechasers and a variant version of Kevin. The Honkai Impact Kevin had a very similar origin. A cookie-cutter righteous hero of his era fighting the Honkai. It became his life mission for over 10,000 years through different civilizations and different time and eras. But he ultimately became the villain in that story. But he did inherit the powers of finality in the end. Naturally, you can see a correlation here. There's no guarantees anything's going to play out similarly, but it's hard to overlook. And you have a lot of concept of time and traveling to the past. We are able to literally travel in the past and change things. And there's a very blurred line between literal time travel and memory. What takes place in the past through a memory, what's frozen in time through a memory that you're living through, or actual time travel. And Terminus the Finality is an Aeon known to travel through time, and an Aeon associated with the Stellaron Hunters, who had some big Easter eggs in this story quest. You can't honestly tell me that a Honkai Star Rail new location with an infinity sign, unknown to anyone in the universe, even Erudition and its emanators, that has a Kevin export variant version as Phainon, with a very similar story playing out. Humans versus an unknown force, the gods, the Hersters, the Honkai, the Abyss. It's all the same. You can't tell me that finality doesn't come to mind. The way that you travel around this map and reverse time to undo damage. Sometimes you're in the past, in a flashback, or in a memory when you're doing this. But sometimes it's happening in the present. This is a very strange place, and it's hard to tell that what we're actually playing through right now, if it's a memory, if it's partially a memory, or if it's actually time travel. This place seems like a story frozen in time, the Eternal Land, and it's significant and isolated and unknown for a reason. What that actually means, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to do more research, and as we get more story with Amphoreus, it'll reveal more. But what we're witnessing in Amphoreus right now with the Titans and humans, demigods, different concepts associated with the Titans, this very well could be the birthplace of an Aeon, or maybe even the concept of Aeons. Higher dimensional beings. Maybe it stemmed from a smaller scale like Amphoreus with its Titans. Or maybe this is the birthplace of the finality, an irreversible ending, now expanded beyond its homeworld, but the homeworld itself frozen in time. A very important lore piece to anyone that lives within Honkai Star Rail and its universe. And the Remembrance caught a glimpse of it, jumped right on that, as Memo Keepers and the Remembrance like to hang on to memories, especially the important ones. I could think of no memories more important than this place. If that's the case, Erudition now makes a lot more sense. What better Aeon with its emanator Herta to crack the code, help the Astral Express from the outside breach and figure out what's going on. And then of course there's March 7th. The ending left us with an Easter egg of her encased in crystal. Now if you followed this channel long enough, you know exactly what I think of March 7th. She's associated with the Remembrance. There's no doubt in my mind, now more than ever, a random body floating in ice that we snagged along the way, and the Memo Keepers follow their Aeon's footstep of abandoning their mortal body. I'm not saying that March 7th is Fully's body and that the actual Aeon is March 7th's consciousness of what she used to be, and her body's now an empty husk, a clean slate to restart. I mean, it's possible, and I have talked about that before, but regardless, March 7th is reacting to being in close proximity of this Aeon. For one reason or another, I'm not sure why. It seems more likely than anything that's what's going on here. I thought about if March 7th actually has ties to Amphoreus rather than the Aeon fully, but I think it's more to do with the Remembrance than Amphoreus itself. But again, I'm not 100% sure on that. We have to get more information. And I will make theories on each topic specifically. These are just my general thoughts right off the top of my head after playing the quest. Now, this black tide, the Abyss, that seems to be corrupting Titans and individuals alike. You can see it already. The divide between humanity, keeping this place a secret, not letting humans discover the truth of the outside world. The Titans themselves in anguish. They feel they're being hunted by humans, which is technically true. The Flamechasers are prophesized to take the course for themselves. They are doing what's right by humanity and its survival. But the Titans don't see it that way. The Titans, which are basically smaller versions of the Aeons, are upholding their ideals. But this mysterious black tide and abyss is able to corrupt them, and it's causing war and strife, literally. Causing humans and the gods to turn on each other. Much like Teyvat. Again, Celestia, the gods, the dragons, and the humans in Teyvat, it's the same thing. The abyss is almost carbon copy the same. Now, they could just be reusing the concept of the abyss, and the Honkai, it's like a parallel. But as a lore YouTuber, I can't justify it that easily. There has to be something more here. And much like Kevin Kazlana fighting against the Honkai for generations, only to see himself become the final villain, the Herta finality, is this version, Phainon, fighting a similar concept, only this time it's the Abyss or the Tide, corrupting the Titans and humanity. An endless war prophesized to ultimately bring an end and ruin to all things in Amphoreus, everyone's ultimate inevitable demise, the very definition of finality. Is this an entire story or recap of his ascension into Aeonhood? Perhaps a story about humans reaching the height of the gods, becoming demigods, and maybe something more. In a desperate attempt to survive, becoming something extraordinary. What did Welt say in Penacony again? Reaching heights uncharted, flying so close to the sun, you get scorched. I really think it would be cool if one of the Flamechasers, most likely Phainon, gets so desperate that he claims all of the cores himself. And what we witness in Amphoreus is something truly extraordinary. I still can't pinpoint where in the timeline this is taking place though. Is it happening in present time within Honkai Star Rail? Because Amphoreus is not a physical planet like the rest. It's just a giant infinity logo. And lastly, I did not forget, how does a Stellaron play into all of this? I almost wonder, when one of the Titans calls out to us, Mother, Mother, where do the Titans come from? Is it an Aeon? But the humans and the Titans don't know about the Aeons. If humans have already claimed the Titan cores for themselves, you would think they inherit their knowledge to an extent. Some of the demigods seem fully aware that there's life outside of Amphoreus, just the general public don't know about it. And if they were created by an Aeon, you would think we would have heard something about it. Maybe that is the well-kept secret of Amphoreus, but maybe the Titans came from a Stellaron. I mean, and if you think about it, it kinda adds up. The Stellaron is the cancer of worlds that spread across the universe like a cancerous growth. But the Stellarons are a type of life form according to Herta, with very special properties that tethers them to a world, and are actually capable of communication to a particular person or species, like we saw with Kokolion Belobog. She was behaving terribly, because Amphoreus is a world with a history of war and violence. And if one of the Titans is reaching out to us, the one person that has a Stellaron in our body as mother, don't you find that a bit curious? We know there's going to be a Stellaron at play here, there always is. But with Amphoreus, I think it's going to be just a little bit different this time, since we don't know exactly when and where Amphoreus is taking place. And that could very well be the reason why Welt and the Astral Express can't actually reach us. We are not in the present anymore. And has Amphoreus been locked in an eternal cycle, isolated from the rest of the universe? A giant memory in period of both past, present, and future all happening at once, which is why you can interact with the environments in Amphoreus. The past, the present, and maybe even in the future with upcoming patches. Regardless, I think I've done enough talking for now. What did you think about this story quest? The story itself at face value wasn't hard to digest at all. It was pretty straightforward. It's everything underlining behind the scenes. Like I said, the iceberg effect. Everything not shown in the surface is what's interesting. There's so much we don't know. So much unanswered questions. I also did feel like, not that I hated that it was a long story quest, but I felt it was dragged out by a lot of puzzles that really slowed down the story. I'm okay with one or two puzzles, and it's not that the puzzles were hard, they were all really easy. That actually makes it more frustrating. It feels like it's just killing time to stall you, and I don't like that feeling. Like going to Mighty's ruined nation and capital was very cool to see, and obviously you can tell he's devastated, but he's a hardened warrior and doesn't show emotion. But it kind of takes you out of the immersion when you're doing like 7 puzzle rooms in a row, rather than fighting enemies and seeing just how this civilization decayed over time. And rather do a million puzzles to get through to the end, it would have been cool to just see glimpses of the past, like we did at the very beginning when we crash landed. It would have felt more immersive. but at the end of the day, they're pretty minor complaints. What are your thoughts on this story quest? Do you have any theories? Do you have any thoughts? A lot of questions they left us with, but one thing I'm very confident in above everything else, I think the third path is the finality. Not exactly sure how they're going to approach the finality, that's just my gut feeling. The destruction kind of fits too, but that's such a baby Aeon. One of the youngest ones in the game. So for me, it just wouldn't really fit right, but I guess I could see it too. We got a ton of lore dumped on us, so it's hard to really recap all of it. I did my best. Again, we'll be covering it in more videos. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.